Hey guys, Dimension Master Studios here. How y'all doing? So I'm sure as you guys know, a few days ago we got some rather controversial information revealed about the Neverrealm, and a lot of people really don't like it. For those of you who don't know, a few days ago, Doc Wyatt, one of the head writers of Ninjago, said that there was a time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago, and like I said, a lot of fans aren't happy about this, mainly because a time difference would mean that when it comes to all the residents of the Neverrealm, at this current point in the show, they would all be dead, and a lot of people don't like it. In fact, I even made an entire video going over my thoughts on the situation a few days ago. However, I've been thinking a lot about the idea of there being a time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago, and I realized that when it comes to the idea of there being a time difference, it doesn't make any sense at all. And so in today's video, I want to talk about the time difference, and I want to explain why I feel like it doesn't make any sense, and I also want to debunk a couple of popular arguments that I've seen as to why a time difference is a good thing. So, let's get into this whole thing. So, for starters, let's go over a bit of context when it comes to the situation. During Season 11, the season where we were first introduced to the Neverrealm, Zane was sent to the Neverrealm during the episode Vengeance is Mine, and then an unknown amount of time ended up passing in between Zane getting banished and the ninja going to rescue him. I've heard some people say that Zane was gone for a few days, meanwhile I've heard other people say that Zane was gone for up to a month, but either way, some time ended up passing between Zane getting banished and the ninja going to rescue him, and during the events of the Ice chapter, we find out that Zane had been transformed into the Ice Emperor and he had been ruling over the Neverrealm for many decades. How many decades? Well, apparently, Zane had been ruling over the Neverrealm for 6 decades, meaning that is 60 years that Zane was inside of the Neverrealm. And this led a lot of people to wonder if there's a time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago, and if it's possible that time moves really quickly inside of the Neverrealm. Since, again, like I said, it seemed like a few days to potentially a month in Ninjago equaled 6 decades inside of the Neverrealm. However, according to Tommy Andreasen, the co-creator of the show, this isn't actually the case. And according to Tommy Andreasen, the reason why Zane had been ruling over the Neverrealm for 6 decades is because when he was sent to the Neverrealm, Asphira also sent Zane back in time. And this is the explanation that I and many other Ninjago fans have been running with for a very long time. That was, however, until, like I said, a few days ago, where Doc Wyatt, one of the head writers for Ninjago, said that there was actually a time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago. Although, when it comes to this statement, it contradicts what Tommy Andreasen said, because Tommy Andreasen made it clear that there wasn't a time difference and that Zane was sent back in time. Further complicating things, though, one Ninjago fan ended up asking Doc Wyatt about the aging of the characters inside of the Neverrealm, specifically when it came to the Formlings and them aging differently in comparison to humans, something else that Tommy Andreasen also talked about. And when it came to Doc Wyatt, he said that when it came to everything that Tommy Andreasen said, it is true. So this makes the whole situation kind of confusing because Tommy Andreasen is saying one thing, meanwhile Doc Wyatt is saying something else altogether, and Doc Wyatt is also saying that everything that Tommy said is true. So again, this whole situation is pretty confusing, and it's not super clear whether or not there is a time difference or if there isn't one. But in this video, I want to talk about why I feel like a time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago, like I said, doesn't make any sense at all. So, let's get into this whole thing. So for starters, let's get a very big one out of the way. For starters, I feel like a time difference doesn't make any sense because it makes no sense from a writing perspective. When it comes to Season 11, specifically during the Ice chapter, we were introduced to a bunch of brand new characters during the season, and during the season, we got a chance to know a lot about these characters. And I feel like it wouldn't make any sense for the show to introduce all these characters to us during the events of Season 11 just to have all of them die off screen. That wouldn't make any sense at all, especially when it comes to Akita, given the fact that during the final episode of the Ice chapter, her return was set up. During the episode Awakenings, during the final few moments of the episode, we heard Akita's narration with her talking about the idea of seeing Lloyd again, ending the season with the line, "Never is a very long time," clearly setting up the idea of her returning and her and Lloyd reuniting. And again, I feel like from a writing perspective, having a time difference wouldn't make any sense at all, because why would Akita's return be set up if she was going to die off screen and we wouldn't get a chance to see her return and her and Lloyd reunite? Again, from a writing perspective, it doesn't make any sense at all for this to happen, because if there were to be a time difference, then it would result in a bunch of characters dying off screen, which in my opinion is a very unsatisfying ending for all these characters, if again, off screen in between seasons, they all end up dying. Especially when it comes to Akita, because like I said, her return was set up at the end of the Ice chapter, so having her die off screen in particular would make even less sense in comparison to all the other NetherRealm characters. Although speaking of Akita, she actually relates into the next reason why I feel like a time difference between the NetherRealm and Ninjago doesn't make any sense, and it is because of the backlash that this would result in. When it comes to Doc Wyatt, he's already facing a lot of backlash for this decision at this point, and I feel like if either the writers or the show itself were to say that there was indeed a time difference and all the NetherRealm characters ended up dying off screen, that would just result in even more backlash and controversy from the fan base, especially when it comes to Akita fans, because like I said, her return was set up at the end of the Ice chapter, and it wouldn't make any sense for the show to set up the idea of Akita returning just for her to die off screen. That would result in a lot of people getting very angry, and a lot of people are already very angry about what Doc Wyatt has said so far, and again, I feel like if the writers were to actually go through with this, it would just result in even more backlash and controversy than what's already going on with the whole situation. Akita is a fan favorite character, and a lot of people, myself included, really like her, and again, I feel like killing Akita off screen after her return was set up, and the idea of her and Lloyd reuniting is also something that was set up. Again, having Akita as well as all the other NetherRealm characters dying wouldn't make any sense at all, because it would just result in even more backlash and controversy than what's already currently going on. Finally though, this brings me to my last and by far the biggest reason why I feel like a time difference between the NetherRealm and Ninjago makes no sense. It breaks the internal logic of the show and what we saw play out during Season 11. If we were to go along with the assumption that there is indeed a time difference between the NetherRealm and Ninjago, and time moves really quickly in the NetherRealm, then that would mean that when it comes to the ninja, when they went into the NetherRealm and they spent roughly a week inside of there, then it would mean that when the ninja got back from the NetherRealm, then not that much time should have passed in Ninjago. However, that's not the case, and during the events of Season 11, we see that during the season, 1 week in the NetherRealm equals 1 week in Ninjago. And this is something that you can see by watching the Ice chapter and tracking how many days the ninjas spend inside of the NetherRealm. During the first episode of the Ice chapter, we see the ninja arrive in the NetherRealm, and we see that it's morning because it's dawn when the ninjas show up, and it's daytime for the remainder of the episode. And it doesn't become nighttime until the ending of the next episode, Firemaker, meaning that when it comes to the first 2 episodes of the Ice chapter, this is day 1. We then go to day 2 on episode 3, An Unlikely Ally, and when it comes to An Unlikely Ally, this also ends up concluding day 2 because it's nighttime by the time the episode comes to an end, meaning that in the next episode, The Message, we are then on day 3. And when it comes to day 3, this day ends up including the events of The Message, The Traveler's Tree, and Crag's Lament. And by the time the episode Crag's Lament ends, we go on to day 4 because we see the sun rising at the end of that episode. We are then on day 4, and when it comes to day 4, that includes the events of the episode The Secret of the Wolf and Last of the Formlings, before we then get to day 5 with the episode My Enemy, My Friend, with it being a brand new day during this episode. And then for the remainder of the Ice chapter, the rest of the episodes all take place during this episode during the nighttime, but that changes during the final episode of the season, Awakenings, where after the Ice Emperor becomes Zane again and Vex is defeated, we then cut to a brand new day. However, Akita's narration reveals that a few days ended up passing following the defeat of Vex and the Ice Emperor, meaning that when it comes to the ninja, they spent at a bare minimum around a week inside of the NetherRealm. And again, if we go on the assumption that there is indeed a time difference between the NetherRealm and Ninjago, and time moves really quickly inside of the NetherRealm, Realm, then that means that the ninjas shouldn't have been gone from Ninjago for very long. However, that's not the case, and we see that 1 week ends up passing in Ninjago, the exact same amount of time that passes in the Netherrealm. And we know that 1 week ended up passing in Ninjago because the events of the episodes The Absolute Worst and the Kaiju Protocol both ended up happening. Also, speaking of the absolute worst, there's one little detail that I want to point out when it comes to this episode. During this episode, we find out that news about the ninja leaving is inside the newspaper, and for those of you who don't know, it can actually take a bit for news to actually go into a newspaper, further going along with the idea that when it comes to the Netherrealm and Ninjago, these realms both flow at the exact same time rate. So when it comes to the idea of there being a time difference between the Netherrealm and Ninjago, it doesn't make any sense, and it breaks the internal logic of the show. Because when it comes to Season 11, it establishes that 1 week in the Netherrealm equals 1 week inside Ninjago, and again, when it comes to a time difference, it would end up breaking the logic of the show and what we saw play out during Season 11. Something that does not break with the logic of the show, though, is Zane getting sent to the Netherrealm and him also getting sent back in time. Because this, I feel, honestly makes a lot of sense given a few different things that we see during the events of the show. For starters, let's start off with Zane getting sent back in time in the first place. Now, this I feel makes perfect sense given Asphira's character and what she wanted to do during Season 11. Remember, when it comes to Asphira sending Zane to the Netherrealm, Asphira wanted to send Wu to the Netherrealm. That was her overall plan until Zane intervened. And as we learn at the end of the episode Vengeance is Mine, Asphira wanted Wu to suffer like she did, but worse. So remember, when it comes to the stuff that happened to Zane, that's what Asphira initially wanted to happen to Wu. And when it comes to Asphira, she ended up sending Zane to the Netherrealm, a realm that is allegedly very hard to escape from, and remember, that was initially meant for Wu. So Asphira wanted to send Wu to the Netherrealm, a realm that is very hard to escape from. Now that's already one way to make Wu suffer, however, by sending Wu back in time, that would actually cause him to suffer even more. Because when it comes to Sensei Wu, he would be stuck in the past, and if he were able to find a way to make it back to Ninjago, then he would be stuck in the past and he would be forced to watch history play out the way that it did, and he would be unable to change anything because it could result in some drastic changes being made to the future. Alternatively, if the ninja were to go to the Netherrealm in order to rescue Sensei Wu, they wouldn't have known about him getting sent back in time, and it's entirely possible that when it comes to Sensei Wu, he could have ended up dying of old age as a result of him being stuck inside the Netherrealm for so long, and it's possible that when it comes to the ninja, they might not have been able to find a way to get out. So when it comes to Asphira sending Zane to the Netherrealm and him getting sent back in time, I feel like that honestly makes perfect sense given Asphira's character and the fact that, again, she initially meant for Wu to go to the Netherrealm and for him to get sent back in time. Again, I feel like this honestly makes a lot of sense. As for the time travel, on the other hand, I feel like this also makes a lot of sense, mainly because of what we've seen from certain villains during the events of the show, mainly Garmadon, Nanakon, and Acronix and Crux, and when it comes to all of these villains, all of them have had access to time travel at one point or another during the events of the show. Garmadon was able to travel back in time during the Season 2 episode Wrong Place, Wrong Time. Nanakon was able to reverse time during the Season 6 finale. And when it came to Acronix and Crux, the two of them both held the elemental power of time, and they were able to use a time machine during the final 2 episodes of Season 7. So the idea of villains having access to time travel isn't that far of a stretch because we've seen it happen with other villains in the past. However, I want to put a big focus on Garmadon and Nanakon because when it comes to both of these villains and their methods of time travel, they both revolve around the use of magic. Meaning that the show has established that time travel is possible as a result of magic. And we know for a fact that Asphira has access to magic because she's a sorceress and we see her use magic on multiple occasions during the events of Season 11. So the idea of Asphira having access to the power of time travel makes sense because she has access to magic, and Seasons 2 and 6 establish that when it comes to time travel, it is possible via magic. So I feel like when it comes to the idea of Asphira having access to time travel, it makes perfect sense. And when you include what I talked about earlier with Asphira's character and her planning on sending Wu to the Neverrealm, the idea of Asphira sending Zane to the Neverrealm and him getting sent back in time, I feel honestly makes perfect sense, and it's completely in line with the logic of the show and stuff that was established during the events of the show. So again, when it comes to the idea of there being a time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago, personally, I feel like this doesn't really make any sense at all. Again, like I said, from a writing perspective, it doesn't make any sense at all for the show to introduce us to all these characters during the Ice chapter, just for the show to then kill them off screen, especially when Akita's return was set up during the final episode. Again, from a writing perspective, this doesn't make any sense. It wouldn't make any sense for the writers to kill off all these characters off screen, because that would just result in a bunch of backlash and controversy from the fan base. And like I said, Doc Wyatt's already facing a lot of backlash for him saying that there is a time difference, so I feel like the show actually going through with this would just result in even more backlash. And like I said, the idea of there being a time difference completely breaks with the logic of the show and what we saw play out during Season 11. And during Season 11, we see that there is no time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago, because time flows at the exact same rate in both realms. So again, when it comes to the idea of there being a time difference, it doesn't make any sense at all. But now that I've talked about all that stuff, now I want to go over some of the popular arguments that I've seen people make as to why a time difference is a good thing, and there's two arguments in particular that I want to take a look at. So for starters, the first argument that I want to go over is that a time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago is a good thing, because Asphira having access to time travel doesn't make any sense. Now personally, I don't really get this argument. Mainly because, like I said earlier, I feel like Asphira having access to time travel does make a lot of sense given what we've seen from other characters in the show, but that's also the other big reason why personally I don't really get this argument. We've seen other characters in the show who have gotten access to time travel in one way or another over the events of the show. We saw that with Garmadon, Nanakon, Acronix, and Crux. All of them had access to time travel, and with Nanakon essentially being the only real exception, and even then I have seen a lot of people who do really like Skybound's ending, people haven't really said anything about them having time travel and it being a problem. So why is it a problem if Asphira has access to time travel? Again, we've seen other villains who have had access to time travel, and there wasn't a problem with them having access to it. So again, why is it a problem if Asphira has access to it? In my opinion, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Another argument that I've seen that somewhat goes along with this is that Asphira having access to time travel is a bad thing because of the way that the information was revealed, because when it comes to Asphira having access to time travel, this is something that wasn't revealed in the show itself, and admittedly, I do feel like the show could have done a better job at conveying this information to us, because in the show itself, it is left kind of vague, although you can tell that's what's going on based on what happens during the events of the Ice chapter, like I talked about earlier. But pretty similar to what I talked about with the other villains, we've also seen other big pieces of information that have been revealed outside of the show. Whether it's in stuff like books or tweets, again, we have seen other big pieces of information that have been revealed about Ninjago outside of the show itself. And while yes, there have been some scenarios where people didn't like this kind of stuff, for the most part, I haven't really seen a lot of people have problems with information being revealed outside of the show. So again, why is it that this specifically is a problem? For me personally, I don't really get that, since again, like I said, we've seen other big pieces of information about the show that have been revealed outside the show itself, and people don't usually have a problem with that. So again, why is this specifically a problem? Personally, I feel like that doesn't really make a lot of sense, honestly. And then I want to go over the other big argument that I've seen people make, and it's that when it comes to the idea of there being a time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago, this is a good thing because it's good world building for the show, and it separates the Neverrealm from other realms. Now, this in my opinion is an argument that is good on paper. Because again, on paper, I feel like this argument does make some amount of sense. because I feel like the Neverrealm having some kind of thing to differentiate it from Ninjago and the other realms is an interesting idea. Additionally, Season 6 established that when it comes to other realms, there are some realms that flow at different time rates, given the fact that when it comes to the members of Nanakon's crew, they were all able to survive for 200 years inside of other realms. So again, the idea that there are some realms that flow at different time rates, this is something that the show has established. And again, like I said, on paper, I feel like this argument works. However, I feel like this argument doesn't really work that well in practice, mainly because I feel like a lot of major things end up getting ignored as a result of this argument. For starters, one big reason why I feel like the argument doesn't work that well is because when it comes to those other realms that I talked about earlier, all those realms flow at a slower time rate in comparison to Ninjago. Meanwhile, when it comes to the Neverrealm, it's the opposite, and this realm ends up moving at a faster time rate in comparison to Ninjago. And again, I feel like this argument doesn't really take that into consideration, that again, the Neverrealm doesn't move at a slower time rate, it moves at a much faster one. Additionally, like I said earlier, we see during Season 11 that when it comes to the Neverrealm and Ninjago, these two realms both flow at the exact same time rate, meaning that there is no time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago, meaning that when it comes to the idea of there being a time difference, this wouldn't be world building, this would instead be a retcon, because Season 11 already established that there is no time difference, so the idea of there being a time difference is something that would need to be introduced and alter what we already know about the Neverrealm, thus retconning how this realm actually works, changing it up to be completely different compared to what we saw during the events of Season 11. However, by far the biggest reason why I feel like this argument doesn't work is because I feel like this argument completely ignores the consequences of what this would end up meaning, specifically the consequences of a time difference affecting the characters both in and outside of the Neverrealm. When it comes to the characters in the Neverrealm, like I said, if there is indeed a time difference and time moves really quickly in the Neverrealm, then that would result in all the characters in the Neverrealm being dead by the time Dragon's Rising starts. And like I said earlier, in my opinion, that would be a very unsatisfying ending for all these characters, especially Akita, because as I said, her return was set up during the final episode of the Ice Chapter. And I feel like killing off all the Neverrealm characters off screen wouldn't make any sense at all from a writing perspective. And when it comes to the characters outside of the Neverrealm, it means that when it comes to the ninja who ended up forging bonds with characters in the Neverrealm like Lloyd, Nia, Kai, and Cole, they would never get a chance to see any of these characters again at any point in the show, because again, they would all be gone as a result of a time difference. So again, like I said, I feel like the idea that the time difference is a good thing because of world building, it ends up completely ignoring the consequences and what this would mean for the characters inside of the show. And also, in a similar vein to that, I honestly feel like when it comes to this argument, it ends up placing subjectivity over objectivity. I feel like this argument ends up placing the subjective idea that a time difference is a good thing over the objectively disastrous consequences that this kind of thing would end up having when it comes to the show, because as I said, if there is indeed a time difference, that would mean that when it comes to all the Neverrealm characters, they would all be dead by the time that Dragon's Rising comes to a start, and none of the ninja would be able to see their friends from the Neverrealm again at any point. And again, I feel like objectively, that is a really bad thing, especially when it comes to the characters in the Neverrealm, because again, like I said, they would all be gone as a result of a time difference, and it would have happened off screen, and as I said before, I feel like that would be a very, very unsatisfying ending for all these characters, especially since, again, like I said, Akita's return was set up at the end of the Ice Chapter, so having her die in particular would make even less sense. And again, like I said, I feel like this argument places the subjective idea of a time difference being good over the objectively bad consequences of what this would result in. And so that's pretty much all I got for you guys. Now, like I said, when it comes to this whole thing, personally, I feel like the idea of there being a time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago, it doesn't really make any sense at all. Again, from a writing perspective, it wouldn't make any sense for the show to kill off a bunch of characters off screen, especially since one of those characters had their return set up. So again, having all these characters die off screen wouldn't make any sense at all, and it would be a very unsatisfying conclusion for all these characters. As I said, I feel like the idea of these characters actually being killed off screen would just result in even more backlash and controversy than what's already going on with this whole situation. And like I said, a time difference ends up completely contradicting what we see play out during the events of Season 11, because Season 11 shows us that there is no time difference between the Neverrealm and Ninjago. Plus, like I said, I feel like the arguments that the time difference is a good thing because Asphira having access to time travel is a bad thing, and this is a good idea because it's good world building. Again, I feel like neither one of those arguments really make any sense, and in the case of the world building argument, I feel like that argument ends up ignoring a lot of major things, especially when it comes to the consequences of there being a time difference, and how, again, objectively, it would be a really bad thing for there to be a time difference, considering how this would end up affecting so many different characters. So again, when it comes to the Neverrealm time difference, as I said, I feel like it really doesn't make any sense at all. And so when it comes to this whole idea of there being a time difference, like I said, I feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense. And when it comes to me personally, I am still going along with the idea that Zane was sent back in time during the events of Season 11, because I honestly feel like that makes a lot more sense in comparison to the idea of there being a time difference. So rest easy, guys, because I'm pretty sure that when it comes to all the characters in the Neverrealm, they are all fine, and I feel like there isn't anything to worry about. And until the writers themselves or the show itself ends up saying differently, this is going to be the idea that I'm going to be going with. And so that's pretty much all I got for you guys. So tell me down below what do you guys think. Tell me, was there anything that I left out when it came to this video? Again, tell me down below, and I hope you guys enjoy. Later, guys, this is Dimension Master Studios, signing off.